Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And this is another late night, midnight podcast, isn't it?
It is because it's Memorial Day. We
Yeah,
spent all weekend having fun rather than podcasting. So,
that's right. Now we have to pay the piper and do something late at night to get it out the next day. That's exactly right. So we did. We had really a lot of fun over Memorial Day, and we had dinner with a bunch of friends. You know who you are from Twin Falls, Idaho. And I have to show everybody what they gave me. They said, "We have something for you. Come to our house." And normally, that's how horror movies start, right? I'm a very trusting person. So we drive over there, and everybody knows how I make Trexmos and love Star Trek. It is Star Trek Barbie, Captain Kirk, Yeoman Rand, 30th anniversary. I'm on cloud nine. This is amazing. Thank you guys so much. It's a vintage thing. They found it at some relative's house and for some reason thought of me. Like, who would be weird enough to want this, right? And it was me.
that might be the secret. Nobody else wanted it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let me have my moment. All right. It's my moment. So, and I have to say, it's funny because I think I mentioned this in another podcast, but a couple of weeks ago at a post-Mormon event in Alpine area, another one of our friends said, "Hey, I got something for you because I saw it and I thought of you." And it was this Star Trek Little People, right? Which is just hilarious. So I don't know. People, I guess now, instead of thinking of like, temple busting or post-Mormon scholarly content, they just think Star Trek when they see me. So that's okay. That's all right.
Well, I happened to get from the same party a book on Southwest or on Idaho geography from a podcaster that does geography, which
Do you mean geology? Do
or
you mean rock?
geology.
Told you,
I'm
it's
sorry.
midnight.
Yeah,
There's going to be
yes,
a
it is
lot of this.
midnight.
So get ready,
On
everybody.
geology because we'd just been through all of southern Idaho and seen a lot of different landscapes that were just amazing. And we were asking, how does all this come? And lo and behold, we meet somebody who her husband was a geologist who wrote a book, and she gave us the book, and it's fantastic. So,
That's
yeah,
right. Do
it's
you
a
have
good
it?
trip.
Do you have the book or
It's
is
out in the
this
car. Yeah, I
it's
left
still
it
in the
out in the
car? There
car.
you go. But yeah, so we're definitely interested in talking with a geologist, and you might look for a podcast in the future about
Yeah,
this because we have
absolutely.
some questions. But tonight, of course, our podcast is about temples, 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 isn't it?
It
Again.
is. Yep. And the reason that it seems like we're doing a lot about temples, but there's a lot happening right now.
Yep.
Every
Yep.
week, with the five different ones, something seems to happen
Yep.
with each one of them that's notable. And so we're trying to make sure that we don't fall behind and that we keep you updated on the most current information. And so that's why we're jumping on and doing another temple one. But again, we have some new items and some
Yep.
new things to
Yep.
point out. So,
Absolutely, because the temple news does not stop. It's day and night. Like I wake up in the morning to emails like, "Did you hear about this?" or "Did you know this happened?" It's absolutely a moving, living story that is being updated every day. So I think we're going to start with the McKinney Texas LDS temple, which is actually being built in the town of Fairview. And we have some residents there that we talked to that are just awesome people. And I think, Landon, you're going to head off this update because you've been talking to them a little bit more than I have this week. So,
yes, we one of the reasons we're heading for McKinney, or that we wanted to cover McKinney, is the last update. The Fairview Planning Commission voted 6-1 against the variant request for the temple, and so we actually caught this just before our last update and was able to bring that to you. It now moves on to the city council. It's a town council, I guess. They have to now vote. So the planning commission simply makes a recommendation. It then goes to the town council to make a decision on it. However, because the planning commission did not recommend approval, that means they need a supermajority from the town council. And I'm not exactly sure how many are on the town council or what that means, but
but it
we've been
means it
told.
can't be like 4-3. It would have to
Right.
be like, 5-1 or 5-2 or something like
Yeah,
that. So, okay.
exactly. So
And that's a great protection because in Cody, Wyoming, and we'll get to this later, they just barely, after all the temple stuff, introduced something like that into their legislation to cover their whats, saying we got to have more people on board. It can't just be so close. This is a big deal. So, but this is important. That meeting, I know a lot of you watched it and watched our clips from it. It was like a nail biter the whole time. People were getting up for, for the temple, people who wanted to be relocated back and forth, back and forth. And then finally, yeah, let's show that picture. It was packed, absolutely, with people. Those are the residents that are just saying, please relocate it to somewhere where it's already zoned for. Please don't drastically disrespect our zoning laws that are in place right now. Please. That's all they're asking. And if you look at the next slide, our residents there were wearing a green shirt. You can see that. And it says Fairview United, keeping it country, follow the law of the land. Because I told them that Mormons are very law abiding. Like they very much respect these kinds of laws. And so hopefully the LDS people will encourage their church to also respect them. And then it says not an inch taller. So we are very proud of the residents there. Didn't you feel, Landon? They knew their stuff. They knew their codes. They went up when they spoke, and they were spot on as far as what they were saying. And they did a great job. And the Planning Commission said, we do not recommend, now pass off to town council.
Yeah, they did a great job. They kept it to the zoning codes and the reasons why it shouldn't be put in the location that it's in. And they used a word that we're coming to use in a lot of this temple, and that was disrespect. You came in here and you disrespected our codes and our zoning, and you threatened that you were going to sue us, and you pushed and pushed and pushed. And now we find out that you told us about steeples and how important they were. And we've now learned that that is not important in your faith. Never has been, that you're making that stuff up, and the people are feeling lied to. They're feeling bullied, and they're not, they didn't take it, and they've let that feeling be felt. In fact, the area authority that was in the meeting, it was obvious at the end. He could tell that that the people were pushing back, and he finally told everyone from the LDS side to sit down, because they just kept getting up and not addressing any zoning issues. They were simply telling how important the temple was, how important the steeple was, what the temple meant in their life, even though the planning commissioner kept asking over and over again, saying, okay, this isn't a question for the planning commission whether you have good feelings when you go to the temple. You need to tell us something zone code related or related to the zoning law. That's what we're here for.
Right. And there was one person that stood up that said, and he was LDS, and I think you've all seen this clip. It's been on Mormonish. It's been everywhere, where he said, I'm an active LDS person, and this is not real. There's no such thing as a doctrine of the steeple. And I'm disappointed to hear my area rep say anything about that because it's not real. We have not been raised on this doctrine of how important the steeple is. This is something that they're just kind of inserting as a legal workaround. So there were some people that did stand up.
Yeah, there were. And I think that the church kind of started, the area authority at least stood up, and I don't know that he had authority to make any decisions for the church, but he started almost backpedaling because the members were asking, why is it called the McKinney Temple when it's in Fairview? Yeah. And he said, well, we could probably change that, and started, trying to go more towards compromise, which I think maybe left a better feeling in the mouth of the Fairview residents. But then as soon as the meeting gets out, we start seeing, new things. And one of the things that came up, or one of the things that was said during the planning meeting, was that the temple was always going to be was always planned for McKinney, even though it's in
ordained
Fairview.
To be there. Yeah.
It was ordained to be there. However, as we reported, when it was announced in conference, it was announced as the Prosper Texas Temple, which Prosper's a couple towns away. And so when they moved it, it actually upset some of the residents, church members that were in Prosper, who thought they were getting a temple there. But I thought it was interesting. And again, we kind of see them playing with words. And so I can't quite tell what they're saying here. It says Prosper Texas Temple gets a name change and site location. This was from the church newsroom back in December of 2023. But in the meeting, they said it was always planned for McKinney. Mm-hmm. So why did they call it the Prosper Temple? Put it in Fairview and call it McKinney. They definitely changed the name, but it says it gets a name change and site location. So, what we heard through the grapevine was that the land they were going to get in Prosper had been enclosed on eminent domain, and they put a road there, and that they went to another site.
Right. And
They're
we don't
saying,
know that for sure. We just kind of heard a whole bunch of different things. We also heard maybe couldn't get zoning. But go to the next slide.
yeah,
It must have been located physically in Prosper, because here are some things from social media where people are upset, so upset that a state president has to intervene that it's moving from their area to a place farther away.
yeah. So you see here, people in Prosper are upset the new temple is further away than the Dallas temple for some of them on the west side. The stake president had to send out an email calming people down and telling them not to murmur. So that was one of the things that was brought up, was how far they were from the Dallas temple.
Right.
But it seems that for Prosper now, the Dallas temple is actually closer than the McKinney one that's located in Fairview. So
But I
that
think
was just
why it's important is because they kept saying at the meeting, these designs, these steeples, the architecture, the location, they're all divinely inspired. Like, they do not change. They alluded to that. Didn't you feel that way? That it's from President Nelson directly from God to him. And, we're sorry. It's almost like we can't change them. Yet here these things show you can change them. Things do change. We also know about the Tooele Temple, which changed. It was going to be in one area. Residents, LDS members were up in arms saying this is not going to fly we have no infrastructure. Very quickly, it was moved to Tooele, where a wealthy landowner donated some land, as often happens. So the point is, it is changeable. It can be changed.
exactly. And one of the things we saw that happened after the meeting that is probably concerning to the residents of Fairview is um, a letter that came out. But we want to show a couple things here just before we get to that letter and explain a little bit about that. Because some local residents went and did a rendering of the McKinney Temple to show, and this is to scale. This is a professional that did this. And notice how much larger than every other building in town this structure is going to be. It is going to dominate the skyline. You can see there the housing that it's mixed in with, and you can see how much larger and taller it is than the housing that's there. Here's a couple other pictures, and we're going to come back to these pictures because they're they're quite interesting. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. But in the left-hand
can't see your
picture,
mouse.
okay, in the left-hand picture over to the left is a water tower. It's kind of a white, looks like a flashlight standing up. That's the tallest structure in town, and you can see it just dominates over the water tower in this picture. So if you want to get a feel for how large this is going to be and how impactful, and this is actually a smaller temple. It's 43,000 square feet, I think. Compare that to like the Lone Mountain one,
Gosh. Or Heber,
there's Heber that's 80
twice
to
as much.
90,000. Yeah. So that just goes to show you the size differences in these.
Well, and can we look at the one, or did you want to revisit the one
No,
on the
I'm going to
right
revisit
later?
that
Okay,
one in
we're
just a
gonna
second. Yeah.
hold on for that one.
Hold on for that. So something interesting happened that you've got to, I guess, understand. We're not locals, but we heard the story because the residents, as we were watching, seemed upset about why are you naming it the McKinney Temple and not the Fairview Temple when it's located in Fairview. And they said, oh, well, the zip code for Fairview is associated with McKinney, and we just use the zip code to name it that. But the area authority said, well, maybe we could get that changed. Well, we asked about that because a couple people asked about that. And we asked some of the locals, why is that such a big, why is that being questioned to that point? Because there seemed to be, you could kind of feel a little bit of a tension in the air as they asked that. And I guess it turns out that McKinney and Fairview, although they're next door to each other, there's a little bit of some bad feelings due to an airport. The mayor in McKinney has been expanding the airport. It's been one of his pet projects for quite some time. And as part of that, I guess the flight path is they've kind of aligned it so it goes right over Fairview, which didn't make the Fairview residents real happy. So the two have kind of been going back and forth over this airport project and trying to get changes. So our understanding is that there's, not necessarily a lot of love lost there. But right in the middle of this, Fairview Council votes down 6-1 the temple in the planning committee.
Right.
And within a week, they get a letter from the McKinney mayor.
And it's the people in the town council that get the letter, right?
Yes,
because that's where the vote is going next. It's a done deal with the planning commission. They said, please don't build this. Now it's going to move on to city council, and each one received an individual letter. Isn't that correct? Or they received the same letter individually.
The same letter was sent to each of the city, the town council, sent from the mayor of McKinney. Now, the mayor of McKinney is the mayor of McKinney, not the mayor of Fairview.
Right.
So what does he have to do with the temple? Might be a question. Of course, anyone's free to write and express their opinion, but he did so on using the mayor's seal and the city letterhead, and wrote as the mayor to the city council. And the letter is just, we'll read it. It's a little doting. When you start reading it, you're going, who in the world wrote this? This is like a love fest with the LDS people. Did the mayor even write this, or did somebody write it for him? Because
I call it the gushing letter. Yes.
The gushing letter.
And I also feel it might possibly be AI. Do you know how sometimes when you use ChatGPT, it just uses words that a person wouldn't use in a normal way, and it puts in way too many adjectives that you have to edit out? I almost felt that way about this letter, but we'll let our viewers and listeners decide.
Yeah, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here so I can read it. And again, what we hear is the mayor was a little bit mad that this letter got out because he said it was written, that it was not addressed to the community, yet it's from the office of the mayor to the other city council members. It's dated May 2nd, so this is just after the vote last month, and it's regarding variance requests by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I just want to read this to you. It says, "Dear Fairview City Council members, I am writing with an impassioned plea to express my wholehearted support for the variance request submitted by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints regarding the increased height of their proposed steeple. As mayor of your neighboring city, I cannot overstate the significance of the remarkable contributions made by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to our communities, both in terms of their outstanding philanthropic endeavors and their unparalleled commitment to community engagement. The tireless efforts of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in bettering the lives of residents throughout our region and beyond are nothing short of awe-inspiring. From providing essential resources to those in need, to spearheading initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity and unity, the church has consistently demonstrated an unwavering dedication to uplifting our community in every way possible. Their compassion knows no bounds, their generosity knows no limits, and their impact knows no measure. The countless lives they have touched and the countless hearts they have uplifted stand as a testament to their unparalleled commitment to service and their unwavering devotion to the betterment of humanity. Furthermore, it is crucial to acknowledge that a similar variance was granted to Creekwood United Methodist Church for their steeple. By expending this same courtesy to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we not only uphold the principle of fairness and equality, but also affirm our unwavering commitment to protecting the religious liberties that form the bedrock of our nation. Despite the baseless assertions of some that the increased steeple height may negatively impact surrounding property values, I vehemently refute such claim. On the contrary, the presence of the church and its towering steeple serve as a beacon of hope, a symbol of unity, and a testament to the strength of our community spirit. Far from diminishing property values, it enhances them, imbuing our neighborhoods with a sense of character and charm that is simply unparalleled. This guy is in love with this steeple.
I'm sorry, that's ChatGPT. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sorry. That is the flowing language of AI.
AI. He continues. As a nation founded on the principles of religious freedom and tolerance, it is incumbent upon us to stand firm in our support of the rights of all religious institutions to practice their faith freely and without fear of persecution or prejudice. By granting this variance, we not only honor the profound contributions of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to our communities, but also reaffirm our commitment to building a society that celebrates diversity, embraces inclusivity, and cherishes the fundamental liberties that define us as Americans and demonstrate as equitable processes considering the previous variance granted to Creekwood. In closing, I implore you to consider the immense significance of this variance request and to approve it with the same passion and conviction with which the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints serves our communities each and every day. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and your unwavering dedication to the well-being of our community. Sincerely, and then it's signed by the mayor of McKinney.
I feel like we should say, in the name of Jesus Christ.
Christ, amen.
I also feel like, I mean, wow, that was glowing, but I think they got some things wrong or not quite correct in that letter. That is something else. Seriously. I wish somebody would have written a letter like that for me, like for my college acceptance or something. Or she is an impassioned and incredible. Yeah, nobody wrote that for me. So.
Yeah, the passion and the fervor with which this letter is written, it's like a love letter for the members of the church. And it has to make you stand back and say, why would the mayor of McKinney write such a letter to Fairview with such impassioned plea? He just seems awful close to this situation.
Well, my first thought is he LDS? Because, somebody that's a stakeholder that has more, skin in the game there might write something like that. But no, he's not LDS.
Yeah. So the second thought is somebody got to him. Somebody who is powerful or who has some weight in the community got him to write this letter on behalf of the church. And I think we are going to show that is more than likely the case. We do not want to use any names here. No. We didn't use the mayor's name. We're just going to call him the Mayor of McKinney. We're not going to use the person, the other people's names that we're talking about here, simply because that's not our intent here, is to, bring anyone any harm or have anyone, mad, because these people are doing what they're watching out for their interest. And so you can't
have every right to do it. They have
every right to do it. Nothing is illegal here.
Yep.
Everything is legal. But we just want to show, again, our emphasis is on the playbook of the church and what the church does. So the church has gone into this meeting in McKinney. They see that it did not go very well, that they did not present well, that the people just standing up and stating how important the church doesn't just, that they didn't just roll over and say, well, you're a church, we're going to give it to you. They said, you've got to be in line with all the other churches, which is one of the reasons that he brings up this United Methodist Church, and we'll address that here in a minute. But you have to ask why. How did the mayor of McKinney get so involved and so impassioned in this undertaking? Well, it turns out that the former mayor pro tem, the mayor pro tem is like a vice mayor. He fills in when the mayor can't be there, and a lot of towns have a mayor pro tem. Happens to be a former bishop and a former. He was recently released from the city council. He was the vice mayor to this mayor who is currently in there. And also possibly they may have some business dealings. We're not sure about that, but
they're friends.
They're definitely friends. We watched several videos where they were praising each other, and where this particular member who is a bishop owns a business that is very active in McKinney, and they're definitely friends. And it doesn't take a lot of thought to think that that friend asked a favor for a mayor to write a letter for them. Likewise, it's not surprising that they're friends, that the mayor might also ask something from his friend. And in this case, this particular person who is no longer on the city council, no longer mayor pro temp, because he was term limits. He served as many terms as he could, and he was out. But likewise, the mayor also, he is in his second term, and May of 2025, I think, is when his term is up, and he cannot run for mayor again unless they make some changes and change how many terms you can serve as a mayor or as a city councilman. Well, it appears that McKinney is in the process of looking at just that. And as part of that, they have formed a committee of 21 people. And one of the people that was put on this committee just so happens to be this member who was a bishop. And I'm not sure if he's still a bishop or if he's a former bishop. But he
and
definitely
friend of the mayor.
Definitely a friend of the mayor and a former bishop. Well, he got just last week. He'd been nominated a couple weeks ago. Last week, he was named to the committee. And what this committee does is they're charged with evaluating the current terms and adjusting the terms and clarifying the service pause period. So they can adjust the terms that a mayor can serve. That's one of the things they're looking at. Can the mayor serve more than 2 terms in office? And this committee is going to make that decision. Now, I would think that somebody who may be looking at an additional term or would like to continue on as mayor, that it would be a positive thing to have a friend who on that board who might make that possible for you. Likewise, you might make possible or try to make your influence noted in something important for them, which is the temple. Another thing that this committee is looking at is they're charged with evaluating current council composition as it relates to the number of council members and district versus at-large members. So they're looking at how the council's set up, how many members it has, and how it will be represented to the community. The next one is compensation. The committee is charged with evaluating current member meeting compensation. So how much these guys are going to get paid. So again, the person that is deciding what your salary will be for the next year has asked you to write a letter. You might just write that letter, and it might be a little impassioned if you're trying to make sure that that this committee goes your way. Overall, this is something that is happening in McKinney. And it appears like maybe things that are happening in the McKinney city are being used to try to influence what's happening in Fairview. And as a result, I think who's watching out for the Fairview citizens in this case? It looks like, this, and we can't say, again, there's nothing illegal here.
Oh, and it could just be a coincidence of everybody knows each other and everybody's friends. That's totally plausible. Absolutely. We have no idea.
But it's worth looking at. And if this is the scenario, who's watching this? This is a McKinney issue, and they're using it to influence Fairview. And who's watching out for the Fairview citizens in this situation? And so I think this is going to backfire on them putting a letter out like this when there's already not great feelings between the city for the McKinney mayor to step in and try to tell the Fairview Council how to vote based on McKinney politics. That doesn't seem like a good mix to me. And I think the people of Fairview are probably going to see that for what it is.
Very interesting, although we can't say. It could just be a coincidence.
Yeah, so I wanted to go a little bit over because I think that the mayor may have been a little bit misled by whatever he was told. And I'm not saying that the LDS people aren't fantastic people, that they aren't helping out in the community. We know our families are all LDS. They're wonderful people. But we're looking at 2 different entities here. You're looking at the LDS people and you're looking at the LDS church as a corporation that is pushing and that is using its political, we've seen in every one of the cities that we've seen them use their political muscle to try to bulldoze over the local residents, while the local residents stand there going, who's watching out for us during this whole process? And so I wanted
And
to
you know what?
address.
I would add that the corporation side of the church even uses the members and puts them, the wonderful, kind, good
Yes.
members, puts them in a situation where they have to tell an untruth about a steeple height that's always been part of their doctrine. Or, I feel like that's kind of what really gets me, is that this corporate side is using these members and putting them in these positions to be at odds with neighbors, neighborhoods, communities. So I'm sorry, that's a big part of it for me. And I'm glad you made that clear. We certainly aren't trying to go at or say anything about individual members. We have friends, family, we love the LDS people, but this corporate side puts them in a really bad position. And we've seen it over and over.
And we want the mayor of McKinney to understand what it is that he is saying, and that it may not be accurate as he thinks it is. We also want the members of the McKinney and the Fairview community to understand that some of the things he's saying just simply are not correct. So I pulled a couple sentences out of his letter that I just wanted to address. The first one is, he said that the church aimed at fostering inclusivity and unity. I cannot think of a less inclusive building than an LDS temple. And to show you why I say that, on the left-hand side is the interview questions that a person must go through in order to enter the temple. Yes, you are going to be able to go to an open house and look at the temple building, but not once it's dedicated and in use. You are not allowed in that building. The only people.
Lobby. You can go in the
in the lobby.
And they keep stressing that.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby. No, but I don't know, because I've also heard anecdotally that a lot of people are sort of said, okay, that's enough time in our lobby. So yeah, that doesn't really mean anything, the lobby.
So let's talk about an inclusive building. This is what you must do to be able to go into the temple once it is once it's been dedicated. And there's more than I'm going to cover, but I'm going to hit kind of the top ones. First off, you have to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. No one is allowed in that is not a member of the church. You have to sustain the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as the prophet, seer, and revelator, and as the only person on the earth who possesses and is authorized to exercise all priesthood keys. No other religion, no other people, but the LDS people who claim that Russell M. Nelson is a prophet and a seer are allowed into this building.
Meaning God talks to him and no other religious leader.
No other religious
leader. Have some truth or some light, but God talks directly to him, and you have to acknowledge that in order to go into the temple.
Mayor, right away, a large portion of your community is excluded from this building just on that alone. The other thing is, do you live the law of chastity? If you are LGBTQ, you are not welcome. If you are in a loving relationship but not married, you are not welcome. If you masturbate, you are not welcome in the temple.
These
These are all questions. That
cuts out the whole community.
The church act.
If they were honest about it.
That's right. They ask you if you are a full tithe payer. If you don't give 10% of your money to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you are not welcome in this building. They also ask you if you keep the word of wisdom. If you drink alcohol, if you drink coffee, if you use tobacco products, you are not allowed in this building. So there's other questions in here. I'm not going to go over all of these, but I want to give you a feel for this, that you probably have 0.05% of your community who will actually be able to go into this building. Only 25% of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are able to go into these buildings.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is actually a small percentage of the membership that can meet all those strict standards and actually get a temple recommend to go in. And I think I will mention, when you said LGBTQ not welcome inside, correct if they are in a relationship. If they are, as the church calls it, not acting on it, meaning living a celibate life, not even romantic dating, like holding hands or, something that you would just consider completely nothing. You can't go in if you're doing anything like that. You can't be a part of it. And certainly if you are married to your same-sex partner, you cannot go in.
That's right. So church members who are in an LGBTQ committed relationship are not allowed in this building. And it surprises me, quite frankly, that a mayor of a U.S. city
Right.
is up cheering for a building that excludes a certain demographic of his community. Not only excludes them from the building, but will actually excommunicate them from the congregation if
there is discipline.
if they get married. They're
kind of hit
disciplined
and
for
miss
such.
depending on the leaders, but there is discipline of LGBTQ community if they are involved in a romantic relationship.
So that really does not bode well for your statement that they foster inclusivity. They actually try to most, and all of us that were members of the church know that you surround yourselves with other members of the church who have the same beliefs and believe the same doctrines. And you are actually not overly encouraged to have outside friends and influences that might tell you different ideas than what the church itself tells you. The other thing he said, not only are they fostering inclusivity, but they are fostering unity. Now, I think the church does a great job in fostering unity amongst the church members themselves. But unity with outsiders, that's just not the case. And anyone who looks at this, just look at what the temples have been doing in the communities, in other communities at the same time. Here we have an article, the LDS Church sues City of Cody over planning process. When they said, no, we didn't pass the planning, the church sued them, not once, but twice.
Yeah.
We also have seen this division of community in Heber. We're seeing it in Las Vegas, Nevada right now. I think you saw in McKinney the strong feelings that were associated with this. And there's no reason for this. There's no reason if they just put it where it was zoned for, but it is their policy. It is their practice. More so than a steeple, their practice is to put these buildings in residential districts, these large buildings, and get them rezoned. And they do it by bulldozing communities because they know local neighborhood groups cannot fight billion-dollar organizations. And this causes a lot of resentment between the people who end up having to accept this building in their neighborhood. And this is not unity. The way to build unity is not to keep it a secret to the last minute, spring it on everybody, and try to get it passed before they can react. And that's exactly what the church is doing in every community. Fostering unity is you show the plans, you go, you get their feedback, you hear the community. You say, what if we did this? How about if we did this? You work with the community. You don't bring in your lawyers and say, Ralupi says we can go and get the Justice Department to come and sue your town and it will bankrupt your town. So you better vote for this if you don't want your town to be bankrupt, because we will sue and we will win. That is not how you define unity. And that's exactly what they've done in this case.
And it's not best practices. I think about, I'm in kind of a sleepy community when a Walmart wanted to build here. And boy, they came to the meetings. They said, what, you want more trees? You want more landscaping? You want it to be a little smaller. You want ordinances on where the trucks go. I mean, they worked for months, I think almost a year, to make sure that all the residents were heard. They were at every planning commission meeting, and they made major changes. They said, you don't want that blue sign. You want more of a sleepy feel. Okay, we'll put a brown sign where it fits in with, you want it to be brick. Fine. We'll make it brick. I mean, this is what someone does. So although there were some in the town that said, oh, we really don't like a Walmart, they did everything they were asked. And now, the Walmart is I want to say the center, the heart of our community, but they definitely, I think that's what most businesses do when they come in. You got to take the pulse of your community, because then you're going to be there. And did you make friends? Did you make enemies? Did you unify? Did you divide? That's what you're going to be living with in the aftermath. And to say that everyone will eventually see the blessings of the temple, or like somebody said the other day, I can't even remember which town, but somebody in a stake said, oh, they'll get used to it. They'll get used to that height and that size. They'll get used to it. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way after this process being disrespected.
It doesn't even make unity in their own church, because people who are not allowed to go in, who can't go in and see their own children's wedding, they can't go see a brother or a sister's wedding simply because they don't believe the same way. That does not, as they sit outside that building going, oh, my family's in there doing this, but I'm not allowed to go in because I have differing beliefs. That does not create unity either. So this building is important to Latter-day Saints, but it's also very damaging and hurtful to those who are Latter-day Saints who may not believe to the fullness that the church would like them to, and also to those who are not members who do not get a place in that. So, here I wanted to play, and this is kind of low. Hopefully you can read along with it, but I'm hoping you can hear it. But this is how the church creates unity. This is what the mayor said, this is a church that promotes unity. And what do? They send to the open house, not someone to explain and answer questions. They send their lawyer to address concerns. And what he tells them is, if you don't like it, we're going to sue you. So listen to this. I know we've played this before.
And I love the reaction, because you can hear the citizens of Fairview going, what the hell? I mean, I feel like people in Texas are not used to being told, we're going to sue you, and take it lying down.
Okay, let me share this. I need to share the sound so that you can hear it.
Yep, we got to do it. Yeah, this was recorded from that initial meeting where the church's representatives.
You need to recognize the federal statute. The Department of Justice is currently active investigating lawsuits and investigations and bringing lawsuits to enforce the laws. So this town, if it's found to violate, will need to comply or face enforcement rules from the Department of Justice. Under the United States Constitution and the federal state statutes, the city can't the free exercise of religion. You can't burden the free exercise of religion. Case law has recognized that symbolic speech, including architectural elements, are constitutionally protected.
Yeah, there it is. We're going to sue you. Actually, they said the Department of Justice is going to sue you.
Yeah, they wouldn't even take.
You got to watch out. Yeah,
that they're going to be the ones bringing the suit, like what happened in Cody. But did you hear the people actually, you could hear them gasp as they're told, wow, you're here. We came to find out what you're building here, and you tell us that you can build whatever you want. And if we don't allow it, you're going to sue us. That's building unity.
There was another recording from that meeting where they tried to talk about how important the steeple height is, which of course is a legal workaround. And whoever was recording it, I could kind of hear a buzz around them, and somebody said, he's lying, which is true. There is no doctrine of the steeple. That's never been a thing. So, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So let's move on to some other statements in there. He said their compassion knows no bounds. Their charity knows no limits. Well, let's look at how much the church gives to charity. Just in 2019, we got an inside look at the church's finances. The church up to this point had claimed, and we heard apostles stating to governments in Africa, that they are not a wealthy church. Well, it turns out they are an extremely wealthy church, more wealthy than the Catholic Church.
More wealthy than God, I think.
More wealthy than God
Literally.
himself. This is a report by the Widows' Mite group, which the Widows' Mite group is an LDS watchdog group made up of members and post members who are financially, accountants, lawyers, and they look into this, and they're trying to determine the values of the church's holdings. Why do they have to do this? Because the church is not at all transparent with their finances. Nobody knows how much money they have. They do not disclose it to their members. Even the 12 apostles, the top leadership of the church, did not know about this account. Only the 3 men at the top knew about this account. And what the church was doing was it was taking they take the money that they needed to cover costs, and then they took all of they were taking the excess money and they were investing it heavily in stocks. And as a result, they built up a war chest of $200 billion. $200 billion
at least. It's probably more like 260 at least. And then also there's real estate. That doesn't even, they're the fifth largest landholder in the United States. They own 3% of Florida. They can bid Bill Gates on properties, and they have. This is a massively wealthy church that has more wealth than many small countries.
And the reason no one knew about it was because the church was required to file forms when they got to a certain amount, indicating that they had so much holdings with the SEC. And that not only did they fail to do it, they created shell companies, like 15 shell companies, to move the money to keep it under the limit, right. Even though it was all in the same fund. They asked the members of the Ensign Peak to lie and sign off that that they were actually controlling these companies, which they were not. They were still under one wealth manager, which required them to report all of this. And the SEC fined them $5 million for this. And people say $5 million when you have hundreds of billions isn't much. Well, that's true. It wasn't much of it, but it was 10 times larger than any other fine that they'd made in failing to report this. And there's an ongoing investigation with the IRS currently in this because it was so egregious. It was evident that the church leadership knew what was happening, and they were attempting to create shell companies so they wouldn't report it, so that the members of their own church didn't know how much money they had, because they feared if their members knew how much they were stocking away, the members would not continue to give money.
And that was stated. That was stated. That was the reason by upper leadership. That was stated. They were worried that they would no longer pay tithing, because you have to understand that where did all this money come from? The church did not generate money. They receive money, 10% of everyone's income, month after month, year after year, invested year after year. How much money do you think they have? I don't think we even really know yet. But the systematic hiding of the money has gone on for decades, as we found out. It's not a clerical error. It's not a mistake. It's a systematic attempt to hide from the membership and others how much money they really have. So this idea of compassion and charity, when you hear how much money they donate, this and that, you have to do the percentages.
You have to do the percentages. And in 2019, when this the church was reporting that they were giving to humanitarian causes $100 million a year. That sounds like an enormous amount of money. But when you have $200 billion, that is like 0.01% of
like
your wealth
nickel
that you are giving away.
Less than a nickel, I think.
At any time. So to say their compassion knows no bounds, well, it evidently does know bounds, because you could solve many of the world's problems could be solved with this much money. Mm-hmm. You could cure malaria completely off the planet with this much money, and have billions left over to serve. So I think
we should mention when this fund, when somebody sort of was a whistleblower, and this is probably for our not Mormon viewers, when this fund was discovered through a whistleblower, very early days, one of the leaders of this huge fund company, Ensign Peak, you guys can all go over to the Widow's Right report. It's very interesting. One of the leaders of this fund said, but we need this money for when Christ comes back, for the second coming. He said it out loud. This is what they're hoarding the money for when Jesus returns. And we'll talk about that a little bit later at the end of when we go through the rest of the temples, when Jesus returns.
So in 2019, the church said they gave $100 million. Amazingly, after this fund was discovered, here last year, the church claimed that it had given $1 billion in humanitarian aid, a tenfold increase once they were found out that they had this much money.
And this was on 60 Minutes.
This was on 60 Minutes.
Talking about everyone knowing. Everyone knows. This entered the mainstream.
But let's put that in perspective. If the church had $200 billion in just this fund, $1 billion in humanitarian aid represents 0.5% of the value of that stock fund alone. 0.5% was given to charity, and this doesn't even include their other holdings, their land holdings, or anything else. The church,
and we also don't know how they report, because they also add up volunteer member hours, like missionaries, and when you go do a service project, and they, come up with a salary hourly, and they count that money as a charitable donation. So if I went over and did something, in the church, spent 4 hours, they would report that they, the church, if they paid me $20 an hour, had given $80 to charity. So even the 1 billion number is not exactly clear. We're not exactly sure what that is. They also use a method by having wealthy LDS donors give money in the name of the church. And so again, the figures are very gray. It's very confusing. Let's just say there's a god-awful amount of money, and not a lot of it ends up in a charitable or compassionate cause.
And that's exactly what this next slide's about. He goes on, says their unwavering devotion to the betterment of humanity. Well, here's a show of humanity versus LDS itself. This is in 2021. The humanitarian aid, as I told you, they were reporting $100 million up until this point. All of a sudden, it goes to $1 billion. But the amount of humanitarian aid going to organizations outside of the church remained at 100 million. Before, they were counting what they were giving outside the church's charitable giving. And in 2021, once it was discovered how much money they actually had, they still only gave $100 million to humanitarian causes outside of the church.
Are you saying they gave the rest to themselves?
That's through LDS Charities, which is usually rich philanthropists in the LDS church who give them money, not the church itself.
Yeah.
The remaining $700 to $800 million that they gave came in what is called contingent assistance or internal church welfare. Now, that's not to say it's not a good cause. It's not helping people, but it's helping people inside the church, and there's strings associated with it. Yeah. You have to pay tithing on the money that you get from the church to help you. You have to hold callings. You have to, they'll lay out different tasks that you have to do in order to get the assistance. And so there's strings tied to it in which the church benefits from the very service that they're giving. Right. They can do a missionary works, a disaster cleanup, and they'll go wear their vests say who they are, and they'll call the wards out and they'll clean that up. That is a humanitarian, but you're not giving any money. That's people volunteering their time. Something everyone else in the world does and doesn't claim as charitable donations, which is how the church is accounting for it. Now, can I say exactly how that money came? No, I can't. Yeah. Because it is not transparent. The church releases zero financial information. So it takes looking at all these records that are available to try to figure out what they're doing. And that's what the Widow Mite does. But one has to ask a question: how can a multi-hundred billion-dollar church not report even to their members how they're using their money? Yep. But the members keep giving and don't question where that money's going. And it's going into buildings like this, in neighborhoods like this, and to law firms to fight neighbors like this. Yep. And that is not bettering humanity. that is taking advantage of a system that was set up to help people. And so wanted to make that point clear. The next item that he talked about is, he said, a similar variance was granted to Creekwood United Methodist Church for their steeple. So he indicates that the Creekwood United Methodist Church asked for a variance for their steeple. And if you look back in the city records, Town of Fairview, Texas, ordinance number 2006-024, the Creekwood United Methodist Church did in fact ask for a 153-foot steeple. Here is the plan drawings that show that steeple. And it requested a 154-foot tall tower. And as you can see up in the top, on September 5th, 2006, it was rejected. What was approved was a 38-foot building roof height, which slightly went above the height that was allowed. So if you look here on the lower right is a picture of Creekwood United Methodist Church. You can see their steeple, and you can see that it is, I think someone told us it's 54 feet high with the cross on top of it. You can see there's a little bit of a cross on top of the steeple. They did not get the variance. They did not build an offensive, disrespectful steeple. They maintained to the city standards. So you might ask, Mayor, well, someone must have a tall steeple. Well, the tallest steeple in town happens to belong to the LDS Church. The LDS Stake Center has about a 66-foot high steeple. And for those who can see the pictures, I know that some are audio, but in this picture, what you see, if you look at the picture to the left, you see the temples, the brown building. If you look to the left, the temple is being located right next to the highest steeple in the city, the LDS Church Stake Center. And that little red building with the little white peak on the top over on the left-hand side, that is the Stake Center. That is the current existing highest steeple. And if you look on the right-hand picture, you're looking down the road, you can see the steeple compared to the steeple of the proposed temple. And you can see that it barely reaches the bottom of the roof, not even to the bottom of the start of the steeple.
It looks like a doll's house.
Is how much more massive this building is than the current largest and highest steeple. So, Mayor, the Creekwood United Methodist didn't get their steeple. Galupi says you can't favor one religion over another. Therefore, you have to treat all religions the same. And if you didn't approve it for one church, you can't approve it for the other church. And so I think we have to look at that and say this has to be taken into consideration, and that they're right. This sticks out. It is not conducive to the rest of the city, and it is not in line with the rest of the buildings in this small town.
No, and this rendering doesn't show it at night, where it will be lit brighter than you've ever seen. And I have noticed in different meetings, they say this light will not spill over like a ball field. That is true. The light is contained around and with the temple. However, the intangible element of the night skies or just simply the environment, you will see nothing else but that building. I suggest all of you, if you live near a temple, drive a little bit. Go visit at, afternoon so that you can see what it looks like, and then look at night. You will see the lighting I'm talking about. There is absolutely no way not to see it, even if it does not technically spill over beyond the parking lot.
Well, the intent is not to have the light spill onto anything except the temple, because they only want the temple to be lit so that it stands out against every other thing that is unlit, so that you can see it for miles and miles. I can see a temple outside of my window that is 20 miles away. I can see it at night as I lay in bed. It's that bright.
Yep, I'm looking at one too right here. There's no way to miss it whatsoever.
Yep, you can't miss them. So we want to go on and show that not only is this upset the residents, but there are members of the church who are hearing about this who are also writing letters. And so here's some letters from people who are members of the church who are expressing their concern about what the church is asking them to do there in Fairview.
And you
And
have to
this
be
is
very brave to do this as a member of the church, because you're kind of standing up against your herd, right? Everybody is saying, we got to get the temple through. This is what they've told us. And a lot of people who aren't necessarily on board, they don't feel they can ever speak out. We have talked to people like this. They don't feel they can speak out. People like this have sent us information. Every once in a while, you come across someone like this who says, I'm a member and I've got to call it how I see it.
That's right. And in fact, this letter is signed. We don't show all the signatures because there was hundreds of them, maybe 300 or so.
It's like
And
a
one of the
petition.
things that sticks out is a lot of them are signed as anonymous because the
Yeah.
people are afraid that if they sign their name, their church leaders will call them in and they'll be either not given callings or that it will reflect poorly on them as members and their belief. And so as a result, they've signed it only as anonymous. But this is an open letter to the leaders. He wrote it to the temple department, and he lists the members of the head of the temple department, including David Bednar, who is one of the 12 apostles. And he said, as a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and current temple recommend holder, I wanted to contact you regarding a growing concern I have. As you will see, many individuals have added their names to this letter to show that they share these concerns. Recent actions by the church relating to the building of temples have caused me to wonder whether we are following Jesus' teachings as recorded in Matthew 7:12 and 3 Nephi 14:12, which reads, therefore, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets, or this teaching recorded in several places, to love thy neighbor as thyself. I recognize the temple is held sacred by millions of members around the globe, and I'm grateful that they have a dedicated space in which to draw closer to God. I also recognize the church's desire to make the temple more geographically accessible for as many members of the church as possible. However, recent actions detailed below leave me wondering whether we as a church are looking beyond the mark. That's a reference from Jacob 4:14. On May 3rd, 2024, the church joined the dispute between Wasatch County and a small group of residents to presumably defend its desire to build the Heber Valley Temple as planned, without considering the concerns of residents or local ordinances. I believe residents have made it clear that a temple is welcome, but have asked that it comply with local ordinances and be built in consideration of the surrounding and dark sky initiatives. Joining the suit rather than listening to the concerns of residents seemed to directly contradict Jesus' teaching that, and if any man will sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. That's from Matthew 7:10 and 3 Nephi 12:40. When disputes arise and we would like to offer a gift to God, Jesus counseled that we must leave there thy gift before the altar and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother and then come and offer thy gift. If we consider temples as a gift or sacrifice to God, should we not leave the gift at the altar, be reconciled to our siblings in the Heber Valley area, and then offer a gift that will help all come closer to God, including residents for whom the current proposal is a cause for concern? On March 7, 2024, a letter was sent from Melissa McNeely on behalf of the church informing some residents of the proposed McKinney, Texas temple site, informing them a temple would be built. This letter indicates that plans call for a 2-story temple, and please be assured that this project is consistent with city regulations. My understanding is that the zoning in this area calls for a maximum 35-foot roof height, and the church asked for an exemption to the 35-foot height restriction since the temple has a proposed 65-foot roof peak and a 173-foot steeple. If I were a resident informed that a 2-story temple would be built consistent with city regulations, I would not anticipate a building with a 65-foot roof peak and a 173-foot steeple. The way this letter sent to residents provides only vague information and misleads recipients to believe the temple will meet current city regulations makes me extremely uncomfortable and has, very understandably, made residents feel deceived. In March or April, the Fisco Stake President and Sherman Stake Presidency sent a letter to members of those stakes at the direction of Jonathan Cannon, the local Area 70, asking that members communicate to the planning manager, Israel Roberts, that the height of the steeple or the temple is part of our religious observance. I was surprised to read these words. Even as a lifelong member, the steeple has never been part of my religious observance. My family and I had the pleasure of attending the Paris, France Temple Open House before it was dedicated. My family was based in Europe at the time for a work assignment, and we noticed that it does not have a steeple at all. The lack of steeple did not interfere with how close we felt to God in that temple on that day. Nor does the lack of steeple interfere with the religious observance within the temple. Church members worship in at least 3 other temples, Leahy, Hawaii, Mesa, Arizona, and Cardston, Alberta, that do not have steeples. And countless small congregations with the church meet weekly in rented houses, schools, cafeterias, and other spaces without steeples. I myself attended powerful meetings in such spaces during my 2-year mission for the church. To now say that a steeple, and especially the height of the steeple, is part of our religious observance does not seem accurate. Thus, if I lived in this area and was asked to express this sentiment to the planning manager, I would not do so. The aforementioned letter also tells the members that a key message of the communication to planning manager Israel Roberts needs to be on the importance of the temple and how it allows you to worship as you choose, to practice your faith, and that the building itself is a symbol of your faith, including the steeple if you feel to be specific in that regard. This statement brought back to my mind the words of Gordon B. Hinckley, who was the president of the church during my most formative years, when he was answering questions following the rededication of the Mesa, Arizona temple, which, ironically, and as mentioned above, does not include a steeple. President Hinckley relayed the exchange as follows. A Protestant minister asked, "If you do not use the cross, what is the symbol of your religion?" I replied that the lives of our people must become the most meaningful expression of our faith, and in fact, therefore, the symbol of our worship. The symbol of our faith cannot be a steeple of a certain height forced upon a community. The symbol of our faith must be the way we follow Jesus' counsel to love your neighbor as yourself. On May 14, 2024, an attorney representing the church in a Las Vegas Planning Commission meeting asserted that the size of the building, including its tall walls, are necessary symbols of faith, as well as it is important to the religious services that temples have very high walls and ceilings. Also, the temple's large, beautiful, and grand exterior symbolizes the hope, faith, and peace and strength provided by God. I can't help but think about where the first endowments were administered 180 years ago on the 3rd floor of the red brick store. There was nothing large, beautiful, and grand about the exterior or interior of that building. Were those ordinances any less valid because of the ordinary dim and small nature of the building? Another room that comes to mind is that upper room where Jesus administered the Last Supper to his disciples. Surely there was nothing large, beautiful, and grand about that room either. And yet the attorney stated in the same meeting that for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, temples are literally houses of the Lord Jesus Christ designed to honor and symbolize his life, mission, and teachings. If this is the case, would the temple not better honor and symbolize Jesus' life, mission, and teachings if we treated the residents of these cities where the church would like to build temples with love, respect, and forthrightness? This letter is sent out of sincere concern and love for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I fear that current actions, as well as others relating to these and other temples, do not align with President Russell M. Nelson's counsel that one of the best ways we can honor the Savior is to become a peacemaker. If you are serious about helping to gather Israel and about building relationships that will last throughout the eternities, now is the time to lay aside bitterness. Now is the time to cease insisting that it is your way or no way. Let us show that there is a peaceful, respectful way to resolve complex issues and an enlightened way to work out disagreements. Close quote. That was President Nelson that said that. The actions of the church and parties acting on the church's behalf are having a devastating impact on the relationship members within the impacted communities have with their friends, neighbors, and the community. Rather than being interested and open to the message our church and its members would like to share, people are on guard, cautious, and even suspicious. Rather than the temple being seen as a light on a hill sharing the good news of the gospel, it is seen as something forced upon a community against their will and despite their misgivings, concerns, or even local laws and regulations. Individuals feel deceived rather than uplifted, forced rather than loved, and ignored rather than included. It is difficult for individual members to follow President Nelson's counsel to be peacemakers when the church is taking such contentious actions and even asking members locally to participate. Some church members receiving this instruction feel they are left to choose between following the counsel of their priesthood leader or following their understanding of the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. Following the priesthood leader would mean ignoring concerns of residents as well as the laws of the land, which we believe in obeying, honoring, and sustaining, Article of Faith 12. It would also mean misrepresenting certain aspects of our temple's faith and worship, making some feel they cannot answer the temple recommend question, do you strive to be honest in all that you do? In the affirmative. By ignoring these requests or speaking out against them means risking losing access to the temple at all, since one of the temple recommend questions is, do you sustain the other general authorities and local leaders of the church? Members of the church should not be put in this position. Our hope is that temples globally, and specifically in the communities of McKinney, Texas, Lone Mountain, Nevada, Heber Valley, Utah, Bakersfield, California, and Cody, Wyoming, can and will be seen as representing the truth that all are alike unto God. 2 Nephi 26:33. This is not currently how the temple is seen. If we want to change this, I believe one critical step is that we must be more Christ-like in the way we plan, propose, and integrate temples into communities around the world. Sincerely, Jeff Anderson, Gainesville State, Virginia. And then this is co-signed by several hundred other people. So I'll let you comment on that, Rebecca. You're muted right now.
I was muted. Yeah. Sorry. I was going to say while you get a drink of water. Yeah. And the reason we read that in its entirety is we may as well not even do any other podcasts. That's it right there. That's it in a nutshell. That is exactly right. He just said it so clearly and, so compassionately for everybody involved. And like Landon said, hundreds of people have signed this. People feel this way. So I wish that local leaders and other leaders would just take note, just work with communities and put the temple somewhere where it's going to be beloved, like it deserves to be beloved, not where it is going to become a symbol of just a really ugly time in people's lives and divisiveness and relationships that maybe can never be repaired. So a wonderful letter. Thank you for reading it.
Yep, absolutely. And the last one I wanted to go over was another letter that just went out and is going into force this week. And this is from the stake presidency, who, said that they, the mayor said this is unity and that these people reach out and that they are loving neighbors. Well, let's hear this letter. Dear brothers and sisters, what a tremendous blessing it is to have the announcement and the ongoing effort to build a house of the Lord in our area, specifically Fairview, Texas. This temple will certainly be a place of peace and safety for the members of the church as we prepare for and attend regularly and are spiritually edified and perform the saving ordinances available there. Additionally, however, this will be a sacred site and that will bless the community of Fairview and surrounding communities because of the spirit and the dedicated, consecrated place it will be. In the world in which we now live, it is important that we continue efforts in our personal lives and our association with others to bring as much light and truth into our area as possible for not only members of the church, but all who reside in this area. That is the power of the temple that is planned. We invite all to be very intentional in our ongoing personal prayers and in our efforts on social media to be Christ-centered and inviting to all who see and hear our request for the beautiful and sacred temple to be built. Please continue your efforts to write the civic leaders in the Fairview area in support of and with the reasons for this sacred place to be built. Elder Arthur Raccoon, our Area 70, recently stated, and we didn't make this large, they did, the Planning and Zoning Committee did not approve the building of the temple. More prayers are needed to allow the Lord to work miracles among us. As part of that effort, as a stake presidency and in council with our stake council, we request all members in our stake use the coming fast Sunday, June 2nd, 2024, as a united fast to pray for miracles and for the hand of the Lord to direct the individual efforts that are ongoing to have this beautiful temple constructed in our area. We testify as we are united in this effort, we will see miracles and hearts will be softened to the work of the Lord can be moved forward as revealed with love and gratitude to stake presidency.
Oh, they're not budging an inch, are they?
Not budging an inch,
could
and
easily get the temple made. Just put it somewhere where it's zoned for. You could start today. People would be so excited, but no, not that.
Exactly. And, the mayor talked about unity. And again, this is unifying to the members of the church, but what are they doing? They're fasting and praying. They're saying that the hearts of those who don't want the temple will be softened. Well, that must mean that they're indicating that the people who are against the temple are hard-hearted,
yes.
Bigots. And that's simply not the case. There are people who are saying this isn't what's zoned for. Follow the zoning code. Put your temple here. Just follow the zoning code. That's what they're asking for. So why aren't they asking that the leaders' hearts be softened, that they might be able to modify the temple design to meet the existing codes, or that they would find a location that is more appropriate for this location. So the next upcoming thing, as you saw, they're going to fast this weekend on June 2nd. The Fairview Town Council
I should say
meeting.
fasting, for those of you that are not Mormons, means it's once a month in the LDS church. You go without 2 meals, sometimes 3 meals. You think special thoughts, you give special prayers. You can fast for a purpose like this to soften hearts. And then the idea, of course, is to give the money that you would have spent on food to the church, who will then give it to charity. So, but the main idea is if you want something, someone's sick or something, you're going to fast for them, meaning not eat during a certain time and think about them. In this case, you pesky neighbors with your hardened hearts.
And someone brought up a great point. They said, I don't remember, there's very few times when the church has told us to fast for a purpose.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And that was not for, it's usually for a drought. It is not for a person who is experiencing maybe cancer.
No, it's never that.
In the stake, it's, it can be for that. Sometimes I've seen that, but it's rare that you have that for a specific purpose. But for building the temple and getting it past a zoning code, that's a legitimate reason to fast, is to get a city to change its zoning codes.
Yeah, and they did that in Lone Mountain just last month, remember?
Yep.
We read that little thing where they said, please fast, that this can happen.
And it worked in Lone Mountain. And you can ask, is it the fasting, or is it $70,000 in campaign contributions that may have helped that through? We're going to talk about that one coming up.
We don't know. We have no idea.
We don't know. It's hard to say whether it's fasting or whether it's political campaign contributions. But the Fairview Town Council is meeting on Tuesday, June 4th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. They have changed the venue to a bigger space because the city council or the town council chambers couldn't handle all the people who came. Again, is this unifying or dividing? That it's one of the biggest, we see town after town after town, huge turnouts, because there's such division on this issue in every one of these cities that we're reporting on. And Rebecca, as you pointed out, the church can ask for this to be extended. The city doesn't have to give it to them.
Right.
I think that would make a lot of people upset if they asked for an extension after the city rented out a larger venue and a bigger space, and other people have taken time to prepare their comments so that they're ready to go for this meeting. So
yeah, and I think there's some kind of meeting in the morning where that could be decided if the church needs more time and the council decides to grant it. But I feel like it'll happen. For now, it's Tuesday, June 4th at 7:30 Central Time.
Okay,
and you can watch it. We'll put some links up on Mormonish and other places. You can watch these meetings. You're gonna need popcorn. We watched McKinney and we watched Lone Mountain. Like over 5 hours each meeting, but you just can't look away. It's pretty incredible to see a civic process. So, wow, leaving McKinney Temple and Fairview and moving on to Lone Mountain, Nevada Temple. This is another one that when we last left Lone Mountain, if we can go to our next slide, they were going to, well, we should say first, it was announced in October of 2022. It is going to be 87,000 square feet, and it's a very, very large temple, as you saw from that picture. So when we last podcasted about Lone Mountain, they were about to have their big planning commission meeting on May 14th. And the LDS members had put together kind of a campaign. It's time to stand for the Lone Mountain Temple. You may remember us podcasting about this. If you go to the next slide, they had called on people to come to the venue. They showed parking. They got an events permit because so many people were going to be coming from the LDS church. We had heard they might be bussed in for somewhere else, but we can't confirm that, so we're not going to say that. But they did have an events permit. Everybody was asked to wear a dark blue shirt to show solidarity and unity. And there was a part here where it said, make sure to be ready for the photo opportunity. They're going to film it all to show everybody on social media and at the meeting the incredible and overwhelming support for the Lone Mountain Temple. So what happened? Did anybody answer that call? Here's a picture of that meeting. And if we go to the next picture, you will see that yes, they did answer the call. There were thousands of people, wouldn't you say, Landon? All in their dark blue shirts. Everybody was there. We had some of the just regular residents from Lone Mountain area. They weren't dressed in any particular colors. And everybody was there in the square on the plaza trying to get into the meeting. There were cameras.
One thing is that lower right one, you can see there's a lot of youth there.
A lot of
well. They
kids.
brought a lot of youth, just like
Yeah.
they did at Heber Valley.
Right. And a lot of the residents we talked to said they didn't understand that because you have to be 18 or 17, I think, to speak. There's a certain age cap, they thought.
Yeah, you
So
have
they
to
were
be
confused.
legal voter.
Yeah, they were confused as to why so many children and young people were there. And I feel probably just to, fill the square to show the numbers, but they certainly did it. So if we go to our next, oh, here it is, absolutely jam-packed with all kinds of people ready to stand up and speak either for or in opposition to the temple. And as I said, Landon and I listened to this entire meeting. We have a couple clips that we are going to play. This was mentioned before in the letter that Landon read, but the first person to speak, or one of the first, and address the Planning Commission was the lawyer for the LDS Church, who again is trying to explain why the sheer size and the height and the light and the walls are all part of the LDS right to religious freedom to worship.
And we'd heard of the steeple argument, and we'd heard of
Right.
the light argument, but she started bringing up even more. Now it's
walls.
walls, ceilings, the bathroom plumbing is part of our worship. Anything that could have that anyone could object to as part of the religious worship.
Jesus has his hand everywhere. So we'll listen to this for a minute.
So, what does that mean? For members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, temples are literally houses of the Lord Jesus Christ, designed to honor and symbolize his life, mission, and teachings. Temples are sacred edifices wherein church members participate in God's highest rights, ordinances, and covenants. The church teaches that the Savior, Jesus Christ, will manifest himself to his people in mercy within the walls of the temple. This significant promise applies to every dedicated temple throughout the world. For this very sacred and important reason, virtually every aspect of the temple is symbolic of Jesus Christ and each member's desire to worship and serve him. The words "House of Lord" and "Holiness to the Lord" are inscribed above each temple entrance to remind members that they are entering God's sacred and holy place of worship. This temple's design is directed and approved by the church's highest senior leadership specifically sustained by members as prophets, seers, and revelators. The approved design includes each temple's location, capacity, height, mass, steeple, and lighting. Each steeple and spire on a temple serve important religious purposes. A steeple is one of the, if not the most, universally distinctive religious architectural features of faith known throughout the world. When incorporated into a religious building of this nature, its symbolism is recognized for a devotion to a higher power. A steeple intentionally, directly, and sometimes subtly raises all eyes towards heaven. A steeple is symbolic of the teachings of God and has revealed to people for centuries. For example, he has counseled prophets to have his followers look up to him as the source of hope, peace, and healing. When attached to a building of this nature, it serves the purpose of sending a religious message of faith, hope, and healing by lifting all souls who worship there closer to God. For this reason, the buildings of many religious denominations include spires, steeples, belfries, turrets, and other elevated structures to draw parishioners' devotion, hearts, and souls up to God. These types of religious buildings are distinguished from other buildings because of their steeples, spires, and similar elevated structures. The size of the building, including its tall walls, are necessary symbols of faith and are necessary to accommodate the meetings and religious services that are held within the walls of the temple. The temple is built to accommodate both the needs of current and anticipated future members of the area. In an effort to limit impacts to neighbors where possible, a portion of the entire building is below ground. Further, it is important to the religious services that temples have very high walls and ceilings, like the spires on top of the temple. God's highest rights, ordinances, and covenants entered into the inside of the temple are meant to draw minds, eyes, and hearts heavenward. In addition, the room designs and temple floor plans reflect distinctive purposes and symbolism. For example, the celestial room is large, tall, grand, and well-lighted room on an upper floor of the temple because it symbolizes eternal life with God. Also, the temple's large, beautiful, and grand exterior symbolizes the hope, faith, and peace and strength provided by God, and another anchor of stability God provides to all during life's ups and downs. Further, the temple's inspiring designs and beautiful features symbolize an extraordinary destination and reward for members who are working hard and are living worthy to enter through the temple doors, where they can participate in God's highest rights, ordinances, and covenants.
I'm getting a little repetition on some of the design stuff. Hey, please. Again, we have the rules. Let's follow them. Just again, I appreciate that there's a letter there, and I appreciate some of the background, but there has been some redundancy. So I just ask I don't know how close you are to wrapping up the letter, and if that's something that you also wanted to turn in for record as well. I'm not sure, but just want to.
It's important to get it on the record why it's so important, because there has been a significant amount of discussion from the opposition about why won't the church reduce the height. And it's because, and you'll see in this room, we have a significant amount of supporters for the church, the way it is designed, for the temple, the way that it is designed, and that it's rooted in symbolism, that it's important to the religious aspect of the way the temple's designed and is lit up at night.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
My final points are that we have collected signatures in support of the project. We concentrated on the following zip codes.
I think that's the end of that. How funny. Yeah, I didn't crop that. We had a couple things pop in, but I think that's fine. We're all just talking about temples. So you're right, Landon. Again, there it is. Every single inch of the temple is absolutely necessary, and in every temple all around the world, because Jesus can visit at any time.
Yeah, we can't make it any smaller in Las Vegas because that's necessary to our faith. Although, the one in Cody is a fourth of the size of the one in Las Vegas. So evidently you can make it smaller, but only if you want to make it smaller, not if the community standards dictate that it must be smaller, or that it's too large for the area.
That's right. I think in Vegas, maybe it's go big or go home. I think that's what I've heard, possibly. So, but again, you heard the Planning Commission saying this is getting repetitive because we've heard the same kind of stuff from other people about, just Christ and the height and drawing the eyes
Their
upward.
point is, we don't care, here's the standards, but in this case, in Vegas, it was pretty obvious right from the beginning of the meeting that they were going to pass this, and and we hear why in just a little bit. So,
So here's one other short one from someone else that stood up. I believe I think he's the husband of the church spokesman, somebody that's been designated from the state to speak. I think he's also a lawyer and perhaps connected politically in some way. So, but he also is, to me, this was interesting because he really started talking about the light. Like they're hitting every aspect that you could possibly disagree with and saying that it's part of our faith. And again, Landon and I between us have almost 12 decades in the church, and these things that they're saying, we've never really heard those in describing the temple. We've heard it's important, the ordinances and the people and the connections. We've never heard anything about the building.
And the first 4 people to speak, I believe, for the church were all lawyers.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, one was the stake president, but of course the stake president is a lawyer.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and play this.
Place where we believe heaven and earth come together. Each time we go to a temple, we make promises to God that make us better neighbors and Christians. We go to the temple to orient or reorient ourselves and find direction in a sometimes dark and confusing world. Temples are a sanctuary for us, and lighted spires are like a beacon in the storms of life. Although every temple is architecturally different, whenever you see one, it's immediately recognizable. Their illumination and spires are part of that. Light is one of the most powerful symbols of Christianity, Judaism, and other faith-based religions. Like the pillar of fire over the ancient tabernacle of Moses, light represents the presence of God. The center spire of the Lone Mountain Temple will connect earth and heaven, reminding us to elevate our thoughts and actions to a higher plane. The lighting on this proposed temple will be nothing like the lighting from the ball fields that are close by. The lighting meets the safety requirements while at the same time projecting enough light onto the surface of the temple, and yet will not spill onto surrounding neighborhoods and into the night sky. As staff aptly reports, the size of the proposed temple also meets the height standards of our code. Church steeples are specifically exempt from maximum height provisions. This is not a 216-foot tall building. It's a 68-foot tall building with a steeple that, as a matter of law, cannot be considered when determining maximum height. Like other temples around the world, this will be a quiet, sacred space.
Yeah, so there you go. This is not a 216-foot building, not at all. It's just a 68-foot building, and it has a spire on it.
And again, they bring up law again. And I think this was the issue in Cody, was the contention that this is part of the structure. And if, they were trying, some of the planning commissioners were saying it's only a steeple if it's has its own support. It can't be built into the structure.
Right.
And that's part of the lawsuit that's going on right now. And they were trying to look and see if the steel joists that were holding up the roof, that the steeple was included in the building, that's part of the building and should be counted as part of the height because it's not self-supporting as a steeple. So again, they're pulling out their lawyers, they're pulling out their legal. What we don't see is neighborly love, involvement of the community, asking for input. They're telling you, here's the law, here's what you're obligated to give us. And again, not arguing zoning code, because the person that got up from the community group had some great legal arguments for, no, this is not allowed. You don't just get to build whatever you want, and showed precedents and went through law case after law case that was pretty much just ignored by the council.
Yeah, it was very disheartening. Yeah, we're kind of giving away the ending, but really great arguments for the residents. A lot of talking about God and love and earth and sky, and yet still the council is going to do what it's going to do. So, and then I think we come to the main reason, one of the main reasons why the Planning Commission was reticent to vote to not approve this, why they felt they probably had to vote to prove it. Here we go.
Would stick out, they've already talked about. So I guess my thing is that, looking at the whole picture, and this boils down to legality. Last thing the city needs is another lawsuit, millions of dollars. So we might have to make sure we do it right. So if you get offended by the final decision, know that there's another element, and I offer to you and the other group.
Yeah, and why does this member of the Planning Commission think that they might get sued and they're nervous about it? Why, Landon?
Because they've sued just about everyone else. And you look at this from the city's perspective. Look at what happened in Heber. Resident groups sued, and the church said, we want to be in on the lawsuit, represent on the side of the city. And almost always the judges allow that. But now what you have is you have the city and a church with $200 billion and unlimited legal resources fighting against a citizens neighborhood group who has a GoFundMe account. Lucky if they can raise $10,000 for a legal defense. They know that the city knows they're not going to get in a protracted $1 million lawsuit with the citizens group because they know the citizens can't come up with that much money.
Right.
But what's government for if it's not to stand up for the citizens? The citizens are paying their taxes for you to stand up for them. And when you
Right.
just fold and say, well, we don't want to get sued because we're already in another big lawsuit that's hurting the city, and therefore we're not going to stand up for you because we'd rather have the church come in and litigate on our side and bulldoze you over. That's exactly what's happening here. And the member of the council is telling them exactly that, hey, this is why we're doing this, because we don't want to get sued. And they're going to sue regardless of whether they're in the right or wrong. They're going to sue us, and we can't afford to fight it. So we're making this decision. And it was clear that the decision had already been made before the hearing even occurred.
Exactly.
Right at the opening, they said, what is the staff recommendation? And the staff all said, we recommend that you pass this. And then the rest was just all noise, listening,
It was for show.
because nobody said anything but I love the temple, I love the temple, I love the temple. And it's steeple height, steeple height, steeple height. Whereas the citizens were given legal arguments for it, how it would impact their neighborhood, and other defenses. Anyone can watch this and see. But the end of the bottom
There's a
line
lot
was,
to learn.
it was clear they'd already made a decision before they'd even come in.
Yeah, and this is Cody to a T, because Cody City washed its hands of the whole thing and said, our main responsibility is, fiscal responsibility, and this will destroy us. So that means there really is no stopping them. There is no stopping, because they are going to turn around and they are going to sue. They are going to find these legal workarounds. And so this gentleman here is not wrong. Unfortunately, you're right. There is no protection for a citizen in this situation when you're facing this much money. And we've seen this over and over. It's the playbook. Should we say the playbook?
Yep. And
Even
unless a
this
couple
gentleman knows
cities,
the playbook.
unless a couple cities stand up and
Yep.
defend themselves in these, they're going to just keep steamrolling communities with this same. That's why they started out right off in McKinney telling them, we're going to sue you.
Yeah, you're right. It goes back to that. They said right away, this is what's happening. All right, let's see if we can power through here. There's so much to talk about.
There is.
Let's see what's happening next after we get this
Okay,
off.
get the slide to move here.
Even the slides know it's late, right? Okay.
Right.
So as Landon alluded to, the Las Vegas Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of the temple. Again, a planning commission votes to recommend, and then it goes to the city council in most cities. Not Cody, we can talk about that. But here's a rendering somebody made. Those are houses back there. That's not the ocean. But again, this is a monster temple. This is gigantic. Again, I don't think anyone can understand how big these are. It is unnecessary. So anyway, one thing that I thought was really interesting is after the meeting, the residents kind of prepared an incident report based on what they experienced at this meeting. And again, this is their experiences. These are the things they observed, they viewed, and they wrote it up. And I believe they're going to file this. I'm not sure who they file it with, but it's just sort of a report on things that they saw that weren't quite fair happening at the meeting. Let's see, I can read the first page if you want to read the second. Let's see, I can skip that first part. It just basically says that we're at the meeting and people were asked to come from the LDS church. So the incident report says meeting incident notes, gang mentality is what they're trying to point out. They say justice.gov defines gang as 3 or more that identify as a group that create an atmosphere of fear or intimidation. Pack the house with hundreds of people that don't live in the neighborhood with blue shirts, signifying a gang mentality that they are in charge. This is what the residents said they felt when they were at this meeting. Taking up all the seating so that the actual residents that live there cannot get in the meeting to oppose. And one thing I will say is that the residents may not understand that a temple district does extend far out from just your city. So there will be people that would be attending the temple that would have been asked to come, and support the temple. So whether there are people that are just there that don't have any stake in it, or if this is just everyone in the temple district, but they're definitely saying it was packed with the blue shirts.
Yeah, they packed the halls and grounds so opposition residents that actually live there can't get in to be heard and made to feel intimidated. I was forced to locate our residents and bring them through the crowd shoulder to shoulder to get them in. Several of our neighbors could not get in because the LDS members packed the house to block us out. LDS stake leader Bud Stoddard said there were no one from out of state. Coincidentally, there were numerous license plates from Arizona and Utah in the parking garage after hours, which also blocked residents from parking. This placed an undue burden on our senior and handicapped residents.
And again, we were not at this meeting. This is just an incident report that the residents are going to file saying this is what we observed, what the residents observed at this meeting. They brought hundreds of kids to take up seats from the actual residents. The majority of them appeared to be under 18 years of age, and per the speaking laws, you have to be 18 to speak. During the open forum, a large group of teens were sent over to stand in front of us and block us, which felt like intimidating tactics, laughing and smiling at us. If you know what whistling whittlers are, you might think of that, huh?
And I actually saw that one. That was caught on the
Yeah,
camera. If you
that was
watch
caught on
the city
camera.
meeting, you'll see all of a sudden this big group of teens heads over to the one side behind the speakers and lines up in a line. And the marshal is there trying to move them, and they keep looking around. And then one of their leaders tells them to sit down, and they finally go and sit down. But the marshal's trying to push them off, telling them because they're not there to speak. So what were they there for? Why did this large group of teenagers get up and go stand on one side? And it was the side where the residents that were against it were at.
Right, they were
And,
trying to
and
step
I couldn't
forward.
figure out, I was going, what's going on there?
Mhm.
So it was a
Yeah,
little
and I
odd.
think there's one more where they kind of bring that up. Yeah, this is what you saw.
Oh, the city marshal saw what was happening and came over to them and told them to move, and they could not stand in front of us. They ignored him, violating the law. They finally moved over about 15 feet, still blocking us. The marshal repeatedly told them they would have to move over to the other side where the line is. These teens still refused to move, ignoring the lawful orders of the marshal. Only after a second marshal arrived to help him move them did an adult member in a blue shirt come over and tell the teens to move, which instantly complied.
Yeah, there you go. They finally moved when a member of the church asked them to move. The members used and displayed intimidating behavior and actions against the opposing residents and refused to follow lawful orders directed by the city marshals. Again, this is just what the residents felt and observed and decided to file. They only moved when directed by an adult LDS member. LDS members were bypassing marshals, cutting in line outside of the chambers, and were finally stopped when our members voiced opposition. So it sounded like it was a crowd. People were heated, there were emotions. And unfortunately, the residents there who wanted to speak in opposition felt it was very difficult for them to exercise their right to do so.
And this is the problem when you use this mentality of, you place an order and you tell people to be there. They come, they adhere to it. They're told they're there to support the temple, and they obey, but they're not there with anything to add. They didn't.
Right.
All they did was bear their testimony, but it was a zoning and planning and zoning meeting. You were supposed to come with things that specifically were why you supported it in relation to the zoning codes, not what was your feeling, and express your testimony and tell people how much and how important Jesus was in your life. That was not what the meeting was about.
No.
And it got taken up a lot by people talking about how much Jesus meant to them, how much it meant to them to go to the temple, and how it made them feel better. But that's not what a planning and zoning meeting is for. It's to discuss, does it meet the planning and zoning requirements?
Right. The question should have been, tell us why this temple is legal. Go.
Yeah.
And then what would you say? But I love Jesus, but the walls, tell us why the temple is legal to be built. But exactly.
It was, it's very intimidating when you bring hundreds and thousands of people and you tell them, come and pack the place.
And that was the instruction.
Well, that we can get videotape that we can send in and say, see, we ordered all our people here and they all came. There's great support. It says more about the church's ability to order people to do something to me, because it was obvious from the speakers that none of them knew why what the issues were related to the planning and zoning. They only knew that what the church had told them, and it was important to come bear their testimony and say why they like steeples.
Yeah. And we've heard this over and over from all the residents that they're shocked at first. Why are they here if they don't have anything to say about the zoning? Why are they here? And we had to explain. They've been told to be there. They've been told to support, but other than that, they're not informed. Now, I'm sure there are some that are informed, but for the most part, and in Heber, we have the extreme example, as we talked about last time, of letters going out to youth groups in the church saying, send your youth over to the city building. There's going to be a meeting. We might, food trucks, pizza, bring them over here. And you got those great moments, for the news. Look how many people support the temple. So definitely part of the playbook to show support. The other thing that our residents experienced, and this goes back to the mayor gushing letter where he said they're inclusive, they support. Our residents in Lone Mountain have experienced honking from cars driving past their house. They've experienced fireworks being lit off on their land, hate mail. If you read the Womp Womp letter, you might have to go back and watch another episode or look for a post. Bad business reviews where they have said this business owner is a bigot and not religiously inclusive, and that not true at all. And now there's been some vandalism. We just found out just a few hours ago, not spray paint. That was a different picture, but there are signs that the residents who oppose the temple have put up. You can see that the signs say excessive height, maintain the finished roof height. These are all about the codes and the zones. Say no, please. If you can see here, that's been slashed with a knife or something. Look at the next sign. It's simply to announce when the next city council meeting is and to say preserve our neighborhood, more about the zoning, the grading, the drainage. These signs have been called hate speech. They're not, but you can see they are sliced. And that happened within hours of having them put up.
Yep, absolutely. And we've seen that with Cody and their
Oh,
signs
yes.
and other
Yep, their
places.
signs were taken. They were painted. Their signs in the Cody neighborhood initially said, please relocate the temple, something like that. Preserve our neighborhood, please relocate. The signs were taken. They were painted with like devil faces and satanic symbols and put back in the yards. No idea why this is happening. So that takes us to the end of Lone Mountain. Again, the meeting with the city council is going to be on July 17th, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more leading up to that as both sides prepare, but we will keep you informed. That's going to be in a month and a half, I guess, huh?
Yep.
Yep, it's going to be well. Okay, we're going to speed through the next three because these are just kind of little quick announcements. We have Heber Valley, Utah Temple. Again, it's going to be another monster at 87,000 with 2 spires. Oh my goodness. This is one of the first ones we followed, and it's quite something. We reported last time that there was a ruling on May 3rd and 2 things were up. It was, can the LDS Church join the lawsuit? Landon already described this. Yes, it's the city and the LDS Church against a residents group funding the lawsuit out of their own pockets. And the other thing the judge ruled on is, should we dismiss the lawsuit? Should we just dismiss it? These residents have no grounds to stand on. That did not happen, did it, Landon?
No, the judge said it's
Yep.
going to move forward.
It's going to move forward. So that's where we stand right now. We're waiting perhaps for some kind of announcement or something or the next steps, but the lawsuit can move forward and the church is now part of the case as a defendant with the city. So we will keep you updated as soon as we hear something, which we hope is soon, from Heber Valley. Okay, another thing that happened there, and I forgot about this. This is kind of cute, I guess, is they're trying to build a new Smith's there. And the headlines are, with new Smith's Marketplace on the horizon, the city council says no to a 20-foot sign. A large Smith's grocery store is under construction along 40 north of Heber City, and the leaders don't want an excessively large sign. Why is this funny, Landon?
Well, to be fair, this is Heber City, and the
Yes.
other was Heber County,
Yes.
or was the county, not the
Right.
city. But there seemed to be a lot of support for the temple from inside Heber City as well. And yet
Yep.
Smith wants to put up a 20-foot sign, and they said no, it can't be over 16 feet.
No, I think we have the article, an excerpt from it, but yeah, they said, I don't think we need something 21 feet high. I think the height of a 15-foot structure is more than enough, said one of the council members, adding, I don't want a lot of signs out there either. What about a lit up
What's a steeple?
temple?
A steeple's a giant sign saying,
It is
here's
a
the
sign.
LDS temple.
Yep. So they agreed to, like, with this sign, limit it, and they're still going to build it, but much, much lower scale. So yeah, they don't seem to have any problem, however, with a ginormous. I mean, this steeple is so high in Heber. You've heard it say this before, and it's in the path of the, the landing path of the airplanes for the airport, they have to put red lights up on top of it. So
Yeah,
it's big.
maybe they'll make them put a red light on top of the 16-foot high sign.
I don't know, but it's interesting because in Cody, the same thing happened. They told us there was a little church that wanted to put up just the kind of sign that you would see in front of a church, and it would be a little thing that would have lights that would change, flash the different message. We're like, no way. They really, really limited that. So it is kind of interesting. They seem to do
Yeah,
special things for
evidently
the
for the
temple.
church, they'll bypass all the laws, go
Yep.
get an LDA sign,
Yep.
get rid of all the dark skies that have been in place for 20
Yep.
years. But for Smiths, no, you got to
Yep.
drop that sign. That's
right.
too
You're out of
big.
luck, Smith.
But we don't discriminate. We love everyone the same. Yeah.
And again, the name of the store is Smith. You would think
Yeah.
that might have some
Could be
appeal to the
Joseph's.
LDS.
Yep.
Anyway, as they put on here, it's a waiting game in Heber. We'll just see what happens next. And that beautiful, Heber's so gorgeous. Bakersfield, California. This one is one that's just kind of getting rolling, right? It was announced in April 2023. So just last year, it's going to be 30,000 square feet. And I think it has how high is that steeple? I want to say like
they're not giving us
68.
that anymore. They've
Yeah.
kind of gone to elevation
We
instead of.
noticed this. We
Yeah.
noticed this when they report. They used to report how high the steeple was. It was clearly there. This is 68 feet. This is 90 feet. They don't say that anymore. They just give you the total elevation. So
Yeah,
but this,
considering how important the steeple height is to our worship,
Yeah.
you think that would be something they'd want to put on there.
I feel like when you're getting married, you and your fiance, you're like, oh no, not that temple.
doesn't meet
Here,
the
find
minimum
another one higher,
requirements.
higher. We'll travel to Boston. Ooh, this is a good one. Look at this. Look how high this one is. I feel that that's what it actually might come to if they don't stop pumping up this, pump up the volume of the temple steeple. So, all right, Bakersfield, here we go. So we have a friend in the area and he took kind of a nighttime drive out there. He also was on Google Maps looking this up, but it looks like the area where the temple will be is already kind of improved. It seems like it has an entrance, has a fire hydrant, and it's already there. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't been able to track a lot down on that because you'll probably tell them that, but yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell the story there?
Yeah, I mean, it is very interesting. The residents there, we put up some flyers that we'd seen from the residents before, where they're set up a GoFundMe. They've definitely hired a lawyer and they definitely have hired a PR firm. And this is, if you go back to that other slide, I believe the area, sorry, yeah, just the view of the Google slide, the area behind that lot is a retirement community. And yeah, you can see those houses. I believe that's the area where they're definitely kind of mobilizing a little bit. But there was an article in a newspaper just the other day about Bakersfield.
And I think you want to show, this is a rendering of
Yep.
that temple from those
Yep.
houses. And this
Yep.
is why neighbors are upset.
Yeah.
These are houses in the foreground, not the temple building.
No.
And this is what you see driving up to your house.
Yeah. Or waking up in the morning, I feel like, or opening your curtains at night.
Yeah.
Don't you think? That light, it's so overwhelming, the presence of it. So yeah, this is a great rendering. They have some really good pictures from Bakersfield that they put together. Latter-day Saints Church pauses the temple project to mollify neighbors. So there's been some pausing, right? We've seen this before in Cody. It doesn't mean anything. Do you want to read that, Landon?
Yeah, proposals for a new Mormon temple in Bakersfield have run aground amid opposition from neighbors who find the planned building's views unfavorable. Evidently, no one told the newspaper you couldn't call it a Mormon temple anymore.
Yeah, no.
City of Bakersfield spokesman Joe Conroy said Friday the plans have been tabled as the church prepares a presentation to better address the community's concerns. This came 4 months after the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints proposed a height increase to its planned temple in Southwest Bakersfield to 124 feet. At more than 12 stories tall, the building would command one of the highest views in the city, more than double the height permitted under its zoning. Look, they proposed a height increase. Oh, it's not big enough. We want to make it even bigger.
Bigger.
Yeah.
Well, I told you about that when our friends in Heber were canvassing to try to get some signatures, one person came running up to the door. And when the person saw who it was in opposition to the temple, she said, build it higher, higher, taller, brighter. So there is that idea that it's got to be bigger, bigger, right?
Yep. The bigger you build it, the more you love God.
The more you love God, that's it. So it says once built, only card-carrying members of the church will be admitted to the white-walled temple, a 30,000 square foot building adorned with huge windows and 84-foot towering spire. 84 feet. There we go. And that's a problem, at least for the card-carrying member. And that's a problem, at least for the card-carrying members of the Brighton Parks, a gated community next door. That's right. The proposed changes came to the attention of 85 homeowners in February via a letter sent by the city planning department. That's what always happens. They get a letter and they're like, what the hell? Right? There it is. First thing they hear is a letter. And probably if it's like the McKinney letter, it said, this will be a 2-story building, right? Until you find out more. And it was sent to homes within a 300-foot radius. A 13-acre plot located at the northwest corner of Stockdale Highway and Julett Avenue. And you saw that from the Google Maps. And it was purchased for $10.66 million. So again, the homeowners are just starting to mobilize.
Yeah, several residents shared their grievances at a public hearing hosted by the City Planning Commission on February 27th. A follow-up hearing was set for April 4th, but was canceled by the applicant, Conroy said. That would be the church. No further items on this modification request have been scheduled for the Planning Commission at this time, Conroy wrote. We are waiting on the applicant. Homeowners at Brighton Parks have since mobilized, forming an ad hoc committee and obtaining legal representation through Hagen Law Group LLP. In a GoFundMe post, this group also warned of dramatic lights that typically illuminate Mormon temples well into the night, though this has not yet been proposed to the city.
Yeah, well, they're not wrong. Dramatic lights. That's true. And as I said, they also, as I understand, have hired a PR firm, which no other city has done. I think that's really interesting. Yeah. Very interesting and important because in every other city, they're instantly labeled bigots, religious bigots. If not having that written on signs, you're a religious bigot, you're anti-Mormon. A PR firm is going to help explain that is not what is happening here. So after much due diligence, there seems to be no compelling reason for these modifications, wrote Brighton Parks homeowner Gregory Ketchum in his post. It has also become obvious that in order to strengthen our efforts to thwart this potential approval by the city of Bakersfield, we will need a budget. So again, like you said, neighbors, GoFundMe.
Yeah, what a blessing for all the neighbors. You get to donate to for a legal fund to fight the church. That's
Heber and Cody have been donating and fighting for over a year out of their own pockets. And finally, the dark skies suit had to go away because how long can you keep that up? You can't. There's no way. As of Friday, 80 people have donated $9,000 to the GoFundMe page, which will go toward a legal fund. In a statement Friday, the group said its members welcome a temple to the neighborhood. Yes, every group welcomes a temple over something like a shopping center. Their fight, they said, stems from the size of the building and its effect on the neighborhood, not the Mormon faith itself. Again, word for word, every group that you see, they're saying the same thing. I wish someone would take notes, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
just before we go on from that, it's just interesting to see that, you know, as we get further and further in this process, later and later, groups are learning from the groups that have gone before them.
Yes.
And that's probably one of the reasons these guys hired a lawyer right away and a PR firm right away, is because they could see that the church was not going to play nice, that the church was going to try to steamroll them. And this pause is not, we saw this in Cody as well. What they're pausing for is they realize, oh, there's opposition. We need more time to get our troops and get everyone in a blue shirt and get them to pack the city hall meeting. And so they pause it until they have all of their people in place to activate this. And meanwhile, the other people know there's a temple going in, but like they said, they don't know any of the details because the applicant provides those. No applicant providing any details to them. They canceled the meeting. They're not including the members. I'm guessing they canceled the meeting as soon as they found out that they had legal representation.
And a PR firm.
Yeah, and yet they're sending their lawyers to do these meetings. So if the other side's bringing their lawyer, people are starting to realize it's probably a pretty good idea to bring your own, because this is not a neighborly discussion. This is going to be them telling you they're going to steamroll you.
Yep. And I will say in this city, like Cody, the city planner or a person involved in city planner is LDS. Now, we're not saying that that can't just be an impartial person, but we've seen in other cities that it's difficult because you have that allegiance, you know, to the church, to try to, your interests lie with the temple. And so we don't know how that's going to go, but we'll be following Bakersfield and we'll see.
Okay, down to the last one.
Cody, Wyoming, the very first one that started. And I have to echo what Landon said. And Cody's the one that started all of this. The fact that Cody and Heber have fought so hard, and there's articles, there are Mormonish episodes, there are other people weighing in. McKinney, Lone Mountain, Bakersfield, they can look online. They can find out what's happening. They can talk to, and they do, these other residents who have been in this fight for over a year. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can start very quickly, and they can learn from their mistakes. So Cody and Heber, you guys are the OG. That's all we'll say. Almost 10,000 square feet. And I can't even remember now anymore. How tall is that spire?
Oh, go
We've been talking about it for a year and a half.
I think that one was 110, if I remember.
That's what I was going to say. We got to have these like tattooed on our arms if we're going to podcast about this. So the final hearing, and this again is a residents group who's been funding this, Preserve Our Cody neighborhood. The city backed out eventually because they said, we can't fight a church. Our duty is to, you know, fiduciary. We have to be solvent. That's our duty. And so it's been the residents fighting the church. And so there was the final hearing that happened just on the 24th, just last week. You want to read that, Landon?
The future of the proposed LDS temple in Cody awaits the decision of District Judge John Perry of Gillette, who said he was taking the matter under advisement Thursday, May 23rd. His pronouncement came after the final hearing on 4 lawsuits, 2 filed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and 2 by the Preserve Our Cody neighborhood group. 2 Sheridan lawyers represented the 2 sides, Deb Wentland for POCN and Kendall Hoops for LDS. The neighbors say the proposal violates the city's zoning regulations and that the action by the Planning and Zoning Board were flawed. The church says the temple and its 100-foot tower comply with city rules, and the P&Z's board's actions were proper.
Yeah, and this has been a long story. It's really hard to encapsulate it in just a few minutes. But there was an LDS city planner. There's a lot of stuff that happened. He since has left that position. There was a lot of things happening with the board where they felt manipulated, voting for things that they didn't think they were voting for, like the steeple height. And that's where these lawsuits are coming from. The church is saying, oh, yes, you voted for it. And the Preserve Our Cody neighborhood is saying, no, they voted, but they didn't know what they were voting for. Is that how you would kind of explain it, Landon? It's like I said, it's a very complicated scenario.
Well, it sounded like all the council thought they voted for without the steeple, but the city planner, who was LDS, said, nope, they'd withdrawn it. And this was the plan you were voting for, and it has the steeple. And there's even some emails showing that the other LDS member on the city council said, did we pass it last night or not? And he said, oh yeah, I had an inspiration and it gave me goosebumps. And the Spirit told me that, you know, this was
it was passed.
And so there's a lot of hard feelings there in Cody due to this. And this goes back to the letter that was written by that we read earlier, where it's like, why are you putting your members in this situation? Why not build these in areas where they're approved for, and not cause this kind of contention?
And where they'd be welcome. And again, letters and emails and texts, they put in a public records request, and they found out all the things that were kind of going on behind the scenes. And I have to say the other cities have done this too, although right away, to find out what's being discussed between possible LDS members involved in city politics and planning boards, city councils. So it is kind of interesting to see that back and forth. And again, the city planner, who in some of these texts and emails, that's where we got the one where he said, I had a tingling spiritual experience that we did pass the steeple. And so he finally has resigned from his job as the city planner. Although at this final meeting, I understand he was attending.
Yeah, which seems kind of odd if you're the city planner and you've retired or resigned. Why are you showing up at a meeting
Yeah.
unless you have an interest from maybe the LDS side to see what
Yeah.
happened? Because which again shows that you're still involved in, as you know, you've resigned, you're not part of this process anymore, but you're there. That just seems to indicate that there's a reason you're there, that you have an
Yeah.
interest in it, other than with your job, because you're no longer being paid to do that. So
Yeah, confusing, but definitely the resident, and interestingly, the residents, about I think 20 of them attended, and they said there was no LDS crowd. At the beginning we had those packed rooms, remember? But now here
well,
at the
yeah,
very
because they're
end,
attempting to influence legislatures, and
right,
judges
and
don't
judges,
care about that. They
yeah,
interpret only the law. So
yeah, they don't care. So what can happen here with this ruling that was supposed to happen within a week or 2 weeks, and we'll jump on and do a short about this when it comes, is either they will say, for once and for all, go ahead, LDS Church, start building. And again, the prefab pieces of the tip-up temple are on the site, right there next to the site, ready to go. So if that ruling comes down, they can start right away. Or the other side of the coin is that they'll say, you know what? There were some strange things that happened. I don't know if they did know what they were voting for. I think there was manipulation. I think there was intimidation and confusion, because we know the church lawyers had said something like, you could be personally held responsible. Remember that, to some of the people that were voting? So if the judge decides there's enough of that confusion, he could say, let's start all over. And what's interesting about that is that since all this happened, Cody has either already enacted or are trying to enact laws to protect the city from that ever happening again. Meaning you have to notify early. It has to take a majority. They're trying to protect themselves.
yeah, if more than 20% of the residents within a certain radius of the project oppose, you have to have a supermajority to override it. So those have been passed, those have been put in place.
So if they were ordered to go back and start over, would they be facing those more lockdown tight laws?
Yep.
Really interesting. Anyway, here's a beautiful picture of Cody. Look how it is, just gorgeous. And I think we've covered all our cities. Maybe one final little note that we'll talk about, because I know this has been going on for a while, but there's so much to cover and it's so important. Again, it's just kind of a microcosm of what the church is doing. But why are they building so many temples? This is the question that all of the residents ask once they start to understand the big picture. Why are there 20 temples announced at every conference? Why are they building so many? And the answer is that picture. What's that a picture of, Landon?
That's the Elder Bednar.
Well, no, the picture before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's that a picture of?
That's the second coming. Yeah,
that's the second coming. Yeah. If you're not familiar with LDS theology, like many other religions, they believe that Christ will come again. Now, they've been saying that since the church was, early 1830s.
They've been saying that since the church, since Christ died in 33
well,
BC,
yes.
they've been saying he's coming back. Yeah.
Christian, I always make that joke. Christians in 3084, he's coming again. But Mormons have been saying that from the beginning, to the point where they didn't even plant crops at a certain, he's coming. He's going to be here any minute. I feel like when we were teenagers and young adults, we might have heard it a little, but it wasn't really in your face that it's soon, right? You might have heard in your grandchildren's day it will happen or something like that, but it wasn't right in your face. But if we go to the next slide, you're absolutely right. I will explain this. Christ is supposed to return, and the rhetoric in the Mormon church right now is it's soon, like it's going to happen fast. Do you want to read the statement? It's not Bednar, it's Bernard. This is a church leader in Area 70 who just said this, I think, about a week ago. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, Elder Bernard told the Kentucky Stake this weekend that people in the audience would live to see the second coming, and that the current massive temple building is for millennium temple work, according to a person close to me who attended.
That's right. So do you want to read the statement by Elder Ballard next to that? And we'll kind of explain what this means.
We're building these temples not only for us in this moment of our history, but we're building temples which will be used during the millennium, when this great work will be carried on in the house of the Lord under the direction and supervision of the Lord Jesus Christ himself.
And there it is. So these temples are built for the millennium. Now I'll explain what that is. The millennium is a 1,000-year period after the second coming of Christ. So he returns to earth. He scorches all of us post-Mormon podcasters to stubble. That's in the scriptures, right? And then those that are righteous and left, there's a 1,000-year period of peace known as the millennium. And in this period, which is, Jesus Christ rules over, Satan is bound, meaning there's no influence from Satan. There's no evil, nothing bad is happening. There's peace in the land, and temple work goes on nonstop in order to perform the saving ordinances here on earth that those who have passed away need to be saved. Because as we've explained before, when people go into the temple, they are going through ceremonies and rituals on behalf of someone who has already died. The living person goes through it, whether it be a baptism or a marriage, representing another person, another person's name. I'm doing this for Priscilla, who lived in 1780, because in Mormon doctrine, unless you do it on earth, it's not going to happen in the spirit world. So you're doing this to save everybody, to redeem the dead is what it's called. And in the millennium, did you hear this when you were growing up? Nonstop temple work, open 24 hours a day.
That's what it was for. Yep. And
Yep.
I can't imagine wanting to look forward to that you get to go spend all your time. You don't go to a job anymore. You go to the temple and sit in a session over and over. Your entire life is spent doing the same ceremony over and over and over again for 1,000 years. Doesn't that sound wonderful? I can see why the blue shirts packed the area there to welcome the temple.
Yep, I agree. Although I did think of something just now. So massive temple building all over, dotting the world everywhere for the millennium. Well, as I said, before the millennium, when Christ comes, it's with fury and wrath and fire. This makes it sound like perhaps those areas right around the temple might be protected. So maybe it's not so bad that I lived a couple blocks from a temple, or you too, right?
Well, if you get savings on your fire insurance, I guess it might be worth it. But I don't think many are going to give you that. Even the LDS owned insurance companies aren't going to give you a break on your fire insurance if you live near the temple. So
nope, it's not going to happen.
I wonder if they really believe that. You're more likely to have a steeple hit by lightning and fall on your house.
Yeah, they're a steeple completely fall over. And that's a thought. Oh my gosh. But again, the message to the residents and people are that there is an increasing rhetoric about the millennium is near. The second coming is happening soon. We've got to accelerate temple building for this purpose. And we're starting to hear it from leadership that it's right around the corner. Everybody better get right with God. And we got to have a whole lot of temples to support that temple work in the millennium. So I think we did it. Do you have any final thoughts, Landon? That was a lot, but there was a lot to cover and a lot coming up that we wanted to make people aware of.
Yeah, my final thoughts are it's late and I want to get to bed.
Oh, really? You don't want to now engage in a dialogue of 15 minutes this week?
Not enough of that.
Could you just leave it running since you're doing the recording, and I'll do.
You just keep talking.
That's right. I'll be like RFM on his Hamlet. I'll pick something up and I'll do it, like on Brush Up Your Shakespeare. That's right. That's it. So, nope, that's it. We are going to go to bed. And we want to say thank you, everybody, for Mormonish Podcast. If you have any comments, please tell us what you think. Are you connected to any of these cities? Have you been following in this? We love to hear your comments. And, the residents in all the areas read the comments here on Mormonish Podcast. And so if you even want to send an encouraging word, please comment on this video. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when a new episode comes out, you can hit that notification bell. If you would like to donate to Mormonish Podcast and help us financially be able to bring you all this content that you enjoy and that we stay up late to create, right, Landon? We have a new way to donate. Let's take 1 second, Landon, and tell everybody what happened last week.
Yeah, we got approved as a 501c3 and we got on donor box. So you can now make recurring payments, donations if you'd like, and help out the cause.
That's right, which is amazing because we've been trying to do this for a long time. We were always a nonprofit, but as far as becoming a 501(c), there was some clerical stuff that we had to go through. We had some wonderful friends that helped us. And so we do. We have a link in the show notes that is to Donor Box, which is so easy to use. You can set up a payment. You can use any kind of method that you want. It's really easy. And again, we will say that we just absolutely love and appreciate everybody that does support Mormonish Podcast financially, because we honestly could not continue to do it without all of your help. And we just appreciate you all so much. So, all right, that's it. We will sign off for Mormonish Podcast, and we will see you next time, won't we, Landon?
That's right. Good night.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.